Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob Jones, and I am with Celeste the Therapist. Today, instead of Celeste hosting this show, actually, I'll be hosting it. We had an arrangement. She owes me. No, in all seriousness, Celeste was actually talking to me about a recent event that took place, and I thought it was really interesting. I thought it would be a good idea just to talk to her about this. And just for the record, I don't really say this publicly or where it's being recorded, but Celeste is my older sister. So that means, unfortunately, we're related. But I am happy to take this time to really get into a serious conversation about a recent experience she had and things that maybe she's learned from it and how to move forward. So, Celeste, do you want to introduce yourself to my audience?
Hey, everybody. This is my brother's idea. I thought it was a cool idea. I was sharing with him about things that happen at work, and he wanted to host me. I feel the same that he feels. Like, unfortunately, he is my little brother. And I don't typically share. So since he's already put it out there, the secret's out. So I will let you start the show, and we'll get into this conversation. I do think it'll be a fruitful conversation because I know a lot of people like kind of struggle with a lot of the different things that I went through. So you go ahead and start.
Sure, sure. Well, so Celeste, you posted something on your social media more recently regarding a job experience that you had. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I so since 2016, I've been full time as an entrepreneur working for myself,
Hmm.
and I've been so far removed from working in the community nonprofit space that I forgot what it was like back
Hmm.
then when I worked in these different spaces.
Hmm.
I wasn't familiar with systemic racism or anything,
Hmm.
So I been working for myself for a few years, and I work mainly with individuals outside of the speaking engagements I do. And I started to develop a passion for wanting to work with other clinicians and interns just to help train them because I think we are needed, but I also see that we're getting burned out. And I think it's because of how we are doing the work that we're doing. And people always will say, like, oh, you should open up a group practice or this. And I'm like, I can't do that. So I decided I was going to go into a agency to work with an agency and become a supervisor. So I got a job as a supervisor at a nonprofit called Till. They have a outpatient clinic called Stratus that I got hired for.
Okay. Okay. Well. I know in the post, the post and it wasn't like a post that talked about a beautiful experience. It doesn't talk
Yeah.
about like I don't know, like just yeah, an amazing experience. It seems to have you had a negative experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I got the job, and the lady who hired me, she actually ended up quitting 2 months into it. It was about May I got hired. And then we had this plan. We was going to work with the interns and the clinicians, but she left. And so when she left, so she was the director of the outpatient program, and then there are supervisors. I'm one of the supervisors. She left. Now I'm in charge of the interns that come in. We had two amazing interns that were coming in, and then I was supervising other clinicians. And so I was left with no guidelines or anything, right? So I just do what I do. I created a system where when the interns came in to teach them, they were both new to the field. And so it was amazing just like seeing them come and their passion, I think a lot of clinicians come into the field that way, but if we're not balancing our life with what we're doing, it's
Hmm.
easy to get so engulfed in the work. So
Hmm.
we had this really good dynamic. Uh, but I was the only Black clinician there. Uh, and I knew my stuff, right? Once I started understanding the systems, like I knew my stuff. So certain things that were happening in the agency, I would say, oh, it shouldn't be that way. Or I would ask for things. And then I started knowing my counterparts, not the clinicians or the interns, the other supervisors and the CEO started struggling with me.
Hmm.
Uh, and so that was hard, right? That was hard to experience because I'm literally there to do my job. Like I didn't want anyone's job. I have my own practice. I literally
Sure,
took this job
sure.
part-time so that I can just fulfill this passion that I was desiring to fill.
So, prior to taking on this job, how long have you been working in this field, in mental health?
Yeah, so I'm 41, so since I was 19.
Damn. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I feel when I have to say the number out loud. Growing up, I used to be like, dang, 40's old. Now I'm like, yo, I was lying. 40's not that old. You know what I'm saying?
40 is the new 30.
40's a new 30. Since I was 19, I fell
Okay.
into the field by accident,
Yeah.
working at a homeless shelter because I needed the money, but fell in love with the population. Uh,
Yeah.
and decided to continue my passion
Hmm.
in this field, which I'm so happy. I
Hmm.
still love it. But yeah, I've been working over 20 years. I've been in the field.
So you would say you're an experienced person, if you will, when it comes to this genre.
Yep, very experienced. I've worked in hospitals, clinics, group homes, so I'm really familiar with the systems, and that's another thing I came to the
Yeah.
clinic with, right? I came with the vast knowledge of the
Hmm.
systems in Massachusetts, the different. So people would come to me, the clinicians would come to me when we were talking about cases. I would help them problem solve. I would have information for them that typically in the clinic was never really readily available. Um, and it's interesting. So things started to take a little turn. There's a few incidents I wanted to bring up,
Hmm.
and I do recognize like my privilege where I was able to speak up because like I didn't need the job. It was extra for me.
Hmm.
But one of the things, I broke my toe,
Hmm.
and the day after, the lady who hired me, she had a going away party, and I was on a boot. Literally, after I got the boot, I hobbled to the
Hmm.
party and I sat in the back
Hmm.
because there was a lot of movement and I didn't want nobody to step over my feet. The
Sure, sure.
CEO, that was my first time meeting her. She came to the back and she said, "Oh, do you want to sit up here with me?" I said, "Oh, I mean, up front with the rest of them." I was probably at one table behind with my legs stretched out. And I said, "Oh, no, it's okay." I didn't say, like, "Oh, my toe." I just said, "Oh, no, it's okay. I'm okay here." That was one incident. Another thing came up. One of the clients wanted to have a Black therapist,
Hmm.
and they didn't have one ready. And so I told her, once my caseload went down, I would be able to take her. And they didn't like that I was advocating for her to. It was no other Black clinician, and they threatened to take her meds away. But in the past, prior
Wow.
to her, there's been other clients who wanted to move from one clinician to another, and it was no problem. They were put on the wait list because they didn't want to see a certain person and still get their medication, right? So I witnessed this. And so when she stated that, there was this like big commotion about it. Another incident that came up. So that was my incident with the CEO, right? There was another big conference that we went to, and it was a mental health conference, and they had for lunch. You can have lunch there, and the organization had a table, but they also had other tables. If your organization didn't buy a table, so I had an old coworker was there at the conference with me, and I went to the lunch and we sat at the table because he didn't have a table, so we sat at a different table.
Hmm.
So I wanted to mention that because the CEO, this is when I knew this. So that happened. And one more thing I wanted to mention that happened.
Mhm.
We were all in a meeting,
Mhm.
the supervisors, I'm the only Black one, with our computers up. Like 3 other people had their computer up, and we're talking about incentivizing things for the clinicians. And she wanted to find out if we had any ideas, and she was asking about a particular program. So I'm looking it up, and halfway through the meeting, she stops and she said, "Oh, Celeste, is there anything on your computer that you find interesting that you want to share with us?"
Mhm.
And my stomach dropped. Right, I just wanted to walk out the meeting at that point.
Mhm.
I literally took my computer, turned it this way. I said, "You asked a question about X, Y, and Z. I wanted to show you." She goes, "Oh, no, no, no. I believe you." And
Mhm.
then I just, I could, and I said to myself, I was like, dang God, like, why am I here? Like, I got so frustrated.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up those 3 incidents because then maybe a week later, she asked to have a meeting with me, the CEO.
Mhm.
And, she brought up the fact that I didn't want to sit with people at the party. I explained to her
Wow.
about my
Wow.
boo. And then she brought up at the conference, they was like, "Oh, Celeste is here." And she was like, "I didn't understand why you didn't want to sit at the table with us." And
Mhm.
I said that wasn't personal. I said my friend was there, um and we sat at another table, you
Mhm.
know. And then she said, "Oh, it seems like you have something for everything I say." And then I mentioned the computer thing, and she said, "Oh, it just seemed like you was on your computer more than the others. If you're leading a meeting, how do you see,
Right. Right.
you were
Right.
trying to
Right.
put me out?" And then she
Mhm.
says, "Well, I hope we can just let this pass." And she goes, what do I said, well, she said, "What do you like about the company?" I said, "I love the interns and I love the clinicians. I love the work that I do."
Mhm.
And she said she would hope that I could be a better team player. And I said, I hope my work would speak for itself. Could we
Mhm.
just let the past be the past? Let's sweep it under the rug, right? And I said, "No," I said, "The damage is done." And she got so quiet.
Mhm.
If I needed this job, I probably wouldn't have been as assertive,
Yeah.
because they do hold the cards. Unfortunately, we are
Sure.
disposable.
Sure.
And I knew from that point I wasn't going to be able to stay there longer,
Right.
because she recognized that, like, I'm going to speak up. But the thing is what is kind of like, you did all this damage. You tried to like make me look bad. You're mad that I didn't want to sit at the table with you, but you don't provide that environment for me. I'm not going to kiki and haha with you, right?
Mhm.
At this meeting that they was asking, "Oh, what does your kids do?" I don't know you guys like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
have conversations about my life with you. And so because you come in to do your job, when they've made the environment kind of hostile with the way that you're treated, they're mad at you because you don't want to play their game. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, and then there's a few things you said. You mentioned a few things about like whether you're the only Black person or somebody wanting a Black therapist. When you were talking about just your experiences, microaggressions came to mind, and it seemed as if it was very subtle, but some of these incidences seem as if there's some type of microaggressions involved. Would you say that's true or?
Yeah, definitely. And I sometimes I'm like, I don't even think people realize they're doing
No,
it because
they
they've
don't.
been able to do it for so long. And it made me feel like this definitely happened years ago, but I didn't know the word microaggression. I didn't
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
I just came in to do a job. But what made me go into private practice and
Mhm.
work for myself, because there was this uncomfortability. The higher I got, when I was a support staff and a case manager, it was fine. Once I got to these supervisory roles and started asking questions and advocating for people, because I can't just like be quiet when something's not right and pretend
Mhm.
like everything's okay.
Mhm.
That's when I was met with like opposition, when I was in positions of power. When I was
Mhm.
not in positions of power, it didn't feel the same way, but I never had a name or language to go with
Mhm.
it, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so that's, I think this experience in 2023 was so powerful because it brought up a lot from the past that I never even realized was
Mhm.
happening because I didn't have a name.
Sure, sure, sure. I did want to circle back around to the individual who wanted a Black therapist, and it seemed as if there was a big commotion. Why do you think there was a big commotion?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like it's not by accident I'm the only black person. I don't, you could be intentional on your hiring process.
Sure,
Like I don't
sure.
remember like that when I asked about the last time there was a black therapist, people didn't know. Right. So you're not intentional on your hiring process.
Hmm.
Um, there's people that say they don't see race, right? Most of their clientele they serve is black. And
Really?
yeah, and so it's mixed, but it's a pretty mixed crowd. And I think that it's kind of like, who is she to bring race in it? And also, I'm a public figure. Like, you can see that I can't, my passion is with the Black community. It's not that I don't care about other communities, but, I realize how lack of resources there are
Resources.
for our community. And so that's my passion. So I think it's just same way when people be like, oh, Black Lives Matter. And then they would be like, oh, what about blue lives? But and it's like blue lives matter too, right? Nobody said they don't matter. When
Mhm.
breast cancer awareness comes up, I don't see nobody asking about what about colon cancer or what about
Right, right,
kidney.
right,
Like
right.
nobody does that. It's kind of
Hmm.
like something about that like makes people uncomfortable. And
Hmm.
instead of people challenging their discomfort, they
Hmm.
get on the defense, and then it's like all this hoorah happening.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think the issue was mainly it was just uncomfortable for me to bring race into it when
Hmm.
they probably don't see race, even though literally there's no other races there.
Hmm. Wow. So I can imagine that. It's funny. Like I think you when you first said it, you said you was the only black clinician there. I don't think some people understand the weight that bears, especially if you're in a culture that, in my opinion. So my background is in theology, but the school I went to had a major for social workers. And when I was trying to get a better feel of the curriculum, it was pretty much formed by white authors. Most of the professors was white. And so when I think about counseling in general, at least in the States or here in America, I just wonder what does that ballpark look like? Who are the authors that these individuals are reading? Who's doing the teaching? I'm sure there's many authors from Black communities, from Asian communities, from Latino communities, from et cetera. We can go on and on, but it seems like that feels dominated, particularly by white culture. And not to say that that's bad, but if there aren't other voices that are being heard, I think it is bad. And I don't know if that would be your experience, because it
Oh
creates an
yeah.
interesting culture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you brought up a good point because that's another reason why I know I went into private practice. I didn't have words for it, but I just did things differently. I looked at things from a holistic lens. I didn't give people a label. I didn't look in there's this book called DSM. I don't even have it because I never used it. I just used it to pass a freaking test.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But they give you these labels and then you feel like, oh my gosh, something's wrong with my brain. We don't ask the question of what happened to you.
Hmm.
If I cut you on the arm and you start bleeding, you're bleeding because you got cut on the arm by me. Growing up with trauma, growing up in systems that were never designed for you, and you're walking around trying to figure out why things are feeling the way they're feeling. It's not because your brain is defected, it's because of all of the things. And so I
Sure.
come into this field, and this is not something that and a lot of our authors in the psychology world are white, right?
Hmm.
A lot of the ways that they teach us as if you're the problem, right? Something's wrong with you. Like we don't look at systems, and I look at systems. When people come to me, they don't come, they can have a million and one things coming over. By the time they get to that place of healing,
Hmm.
they understand why the behaviors are happening or why
Hmm.
they're doing what they're doing. It's not because they're defective, it's because something's happened. And I give people hope because as long as you're still breathing, there's room for change.
Sure.
And so that's a big issue I have and the way that the mental health system works in this country. In 2018, I started this podcast because I wanted to teach people about other ways of healing. Because if you don't have a psychiatrist or a therapist, people really start to feel hopeless about their life. And
Hmm.
my goal is for people not to feel hopeless.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. So, all right. So you have this experience with your CEO. You're in her
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
Y'all are talking. So what happens next? you brought us to a climax in this story. I need to hear
Yeah, so,
this.
I'm trying to thug it out because so I got hired in May.
Okay.
This incident happened like October, November.
Hmm.
They replaced my supervisor with another young lady, and she doesn't come with all this experience. So I know she felt threatened by me. My first supervision with her, I let her know, hey, I don't want your job. I have my own practice. I'm literally doing this because I love to teach. And the first, our first supervision, she didn't really have much to say. She was nervous. She was asking me about podcasting. Like, it was very like not professional at all, right? And I said, you can go online, and because she said she had a friend and blah blah blah. Like, okay, clearly you looked me up, right? And I wasn't cold, but I wasn't like, oh yeah, da 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 da. I came here to do a job, not to be your
Right,
friend.
right.
I
Mhm.
know that turned her off when we would be in meetings. And she would suggest things like she was trying to get what they did. She wanted to get rid of the peer supervision where the clinicians just get together once a month. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea. I was telling her why. So these things I know turned her off, right? So it got to the point where she came into my office, because she's literally next to my office, keeps her door closes, but emails me. I have an open door policy. My door is open, and she's emailing me about something with the interns. I said, it's probably easier if we just talk in person. She comes into my office and she says, I feel like there's always something with you. And I was like, well, what does that mean? She said, I feel like you always have a problem. I said, I don't have a problem. I said, you don't like what I have to say. Like I said, when you ask questions, I'm not somebody that just agrees to agree. If it doesn't make sense, I'm going to say it respectfully.
Mhm.
And so as soon as she left my office, mind you, the day before I had put in for a vacation in January, I was going away for my husband's birthday. I put in for vacation. Literally, she walked out my office and I sent my resignation into. I
Mhm.
said, I can't live my life. My spirit was very, very much disrupted, right? I said, hey, like, I don't even get paid enough to be dealing with this. There's always something with you. So this was in November, right? So no, this was in December. So like the beginning of December, I gave a 2-month notice.
Mhm.
So I would finish out December and January, give them 2 months to find another supervisor. And I
That's a long
wanted to
time, by the way, Celeste. Two
yeah,
months.
give people the holidays because I knew the holidays was here, and that way maybe January they can get somebody to start then. I was being mindful. I would have never talked about this if this next thing didn't happen. I would have just been like, you know what, it wasn't a good fit. Nobody would have heard about this. So this was the end of November-ish when I gave my notice and they said, okay. December 26th, the day after Christmas, mind you, I have 5 clients, I have clinicians, I have interns, and I was going to talk to them around that time about me leaving and stuff, give them a slow transition.
Mhm.
And December 26th, I come in and she's like, oh, let's have a meeting at 11. So I was like, all right, cool. I wrote down the things I wanted to say about the transition. I walk into her office and the human resource lady's there and
Wow.
she's there. And I'm like, okay, like, because I already gave my notice, so I was like, they can't be firing me, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
They was firing me. Big check because they had to check for the rest of December and
Mhm.
then all of January until my end date. And they I've never been written up, nothing, right?
Mhm.
And I sit down and then I said, oh, wait, hold on for a second. I was like, I felt a little emotional because I'm thinking about me. I'm always thinking about other people. I'm thinking about the clients
Mhm.
and the people I haven't told, and you just want me to leave. This was a Tuesday. My shift, I did like part-time Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So this is a Tuesday, like halfway in the day. And
Mhm.
I had people scheduled later that day and the next day. And I was like, I get you don't like me. I was like, I get it. I said, I don't like being here either, but I said, this isn't fair to the clients. I started advocating. I said, I need the clinician. There's people that there's people that are having a hard time. And I said, it wouldn't be fair to them. And my supervisor, she was saying, well, I wanted to know about this. The stuff she was talking about, I had a sticky note with the stuff and I showed the human resource lady, like, this is what we were preparing to talk about. Because the last session you wanted to ask me about my podcast. Now you're trying to say, like, now you're trying to be professional. And then this human resource lady, she was all like you could tell she was like, yeah, like, it's crazy. So I was like, all right, how about this? I said, clearly you don't want me to stay to the end of my thing. I see you got the check there. You know what I'm saying? Clearly, like, I said, if I didn't really care about these people, I said, I'll just take that check and be out because I'm the one coming up on top. They're about to pay me out for January without having to be here. Like, that's a whole win.
Yeah.
So then I said, well, how about this? Is it okay if I just finish out my day, come in the next day, just so I can like try to reach out to clients and wrap things up? I said, and then she looked, and the human resource lady looked at her. She said, I'm okay with it if you're okay. Because it's like, have you ever heard of somebody getting fired and then being able to stay to finish their shift the next day? Who advocates for that, right? Like,
Right.
So they said, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to my office, started wrapping up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was meeting with people. I was like, hey, so I got fired. Like, it was so weird. Like, the clinicians was coming in like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I was like, yeah, like people couldn't believe it. And it shows you that clearly whatever they wanted to fire me for, was it really that bad that they allowed me to stay to finish up my shift?
I mean, they didn't even have, you said they didn't have any write-ups or anything like that. That
No
sounded like
write-ups.
a personal issue, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I knew it was personal. And I just thought about like, because it's like, oh, I left before they fired me. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I don't know who this Black girl thinks she is. Like, she is not about to be going out on her own recognizance. We're gonna push her out. But it's like, you're trying to stick it to me, but you're sticking it to clients. You're sticking it to staff, right? This is not, we're not talking about numbers. We're not talking about property. We're talking about people. And at that moment,
diversity, Celeste. And diversity. They have no more diversity.
They have they generated diversity card for that department. You know what I'm saying? So December 26th, I said to myself, I have to tell people about this, right? But at the time, I was too emotional. The emotions wasn't about me, Jacob. I just told you they paid me out for January.
Yeah.
I didn't lose. I didn't lose. I thought about all the Black women that go through this because I'm talking to them about this stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, but and then I thought about, Celeste, like you have a full practice, like you don't have to be there. And I think about the people that don't have that backup, right? And they're being gaslit, or they're 1 minute your supervisor wants to kiki with you about your personal stuff, and the next minute they're mad because you don't want to kiki back.
Right.
I didn't get hired to kiki. I got hired to do a job. Your CEO's telling you like, oh, I hope you could be a team player. Look at the numbers. Look at what I'm bringing into the table. I'm not a team player. Oh, because I don't want to sit at the table. Literally, I didn't want to sit at the table with you. And you take it personal because I'm not jucking and jiving, right? And so I thought about that, and I said, I want to share, I want to create a blog post. I want to share my story. And then you came up with this idea to bring it here. And I thought that was great, right? Because I didn't want to share it with emotion. I want to like stick to the facts of the story before I even start to bring it out. And that's why, beautiful mindsets have come out of this experience.
Okay. Well, since I definitely know you're 41 because you said jucking and jiving. So I was like, yeah, she's past 40.
No, it's the old people I speak to.
Oh, okay. Yo, Celeste, earlier you said you didn't feel right in your spirit. Did you have to apologize for anything after you like felt you didn't feel right in your? No, my fault.
Are you bringing that up because of J. Cole?
Yeah. I know you're a J. Cole fan.
It wasn't that right. It was more like this is wrong.
Oh, okay, bet.
Not that I did anything wrong. Okay. This is wrong.
Okay. So I mean, I do have a couple more questions, but one, I know you said it a little bit. Once you left the job, you had a lot of emotions and feelings. How did you get through that? How did you process that? Because, there are people who are possibly didn't have the opportunity to say, let me stay a few more days. And I know you was doing it for, the people that you was working with, whether it was internal clients or external clients, what have you. And I think that was really cool because especially with therapy, you can't just cut people off. They're going through the worst, now they have to put their trust in somebody new. So I appreciate that you did that. But like the emotions and the feelings, how did you process that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And thank you. I already the check was ready for me. I already got paid
Mhm.
for the day I'm trying to stay for, right?
Mhm.
So it clearly like I had a passion for people. A few months, I mean, maybe a month before I gave my notice, I realized I was walking into work, and before I was able to like, okay, it's them, but then the energy was just feel like it was sucking me dry, right?
Sure.
So I had the plan. So first it was like, okay, I'm going to try to stay till May till the intern's finished. But then I said, no, I can't because my spirit. And for people listening that may not be in a position that I am to just quit, what can help you is creating a plan, right? So initially my plan was May, but then I realized I couldn't stay that long, but sometimes that's not people's position. And so the way I dealt with it by reminding myself I'm not stuck here.
Mhm.
I literally wasn't stuck here. For people that are listening, remind yourself you're not stuck there, right? Like
Mhm. Right.
making sure, and I have really good systems where after work, I can leave work at work. But then I found myself being annoyed, especially after she tried to call me out.
Mhm.
And I remember that day I went into my car, and I was like, yo, God, why am I here? Like, why? Because, I couldn't just walk out because, I care about people. I would never just do that.
Mhm.
But I said, why am I here? And I felt in my spirit, it says, because I need you to create your own,
Mhm.
right? Like I felt that. I didn't know what that meant.
Mhm.
But now I do. But I just felt like I needed to create my own that experience, as uncomfortable as it was, gave me clarity around next steps of my life. And sometimes, like that's the case when you're in a situation that you're struggling with, really make time to like think about what is the lesson that you're trying to be taught or being taught during that time.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
can you pull out of it?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
that's the way I kind of dealt with my emotions. Is I acknowledged them, I named them, I challenged them. I didn't allow the system or in that space to define me. Like I'm a very grounded person. I know who I am. I know what I
Mhm.
provide.
Mhm.
And that was my saving grace. If I didn't know who I was, if I didn't know what I came to the table with, it's easy to get sucked in by these systems.
Sure. 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 Okay. So I think that's great. I do think that's good. That's a good outlook for people, especially when they're going to do hardships of any time, but specifically as it goes, as it relates to um, being let go from a job, because that could be such, that can feel like a divorce or, some type like a death, like I think that can be something hard to deal with. And it might even for some people take away their dignity. So I thank you for sharing that. So what's next? How would you like? What's next? Like, what do you do from here?
Yeah, good question. You know, uh, I got demoted. People that's been listening to this podcast for a while, I got demoted. I had my master's in counseling. I didn't go for my license. And, I was the first person in my family to kind of get this degree. And I just felt like, oh, I'm great, but I'm doing amazing
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't have a different bar, right? Like I was the bar.
Mm-hmm.
But I was very much underpaid and overworked.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I got into the supervisory role. And then I'm asking questions. One week it's like, oh my gosh, people are moving out. Like I'm creating this bond. But then the next week I'm getting demoted. And I was only making $43,000 with my master's. They took 5,000 away. So that I'm down, went from 43 to 37,000
Mm-hmm.
um, with my master's. And then I went from being a supervisor to a case manager.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the lesson, right? And I said, oh, you're disposable. And it propelled me to go for my license. I wouldn't be Celeste the Therapist, right? I wouldn't have this platform if I didn't get that demotion. So that was the lesson. This lesson here, you know, uh,
And
I
so, like,
enjoy,
that was a previous job, right?
that was a
This is
previous
years.
job.
Okay, just
I
to
was,
confirm. Okay.
I had just had my daughter I was at the shelter that I
Oh,
fell
okay.
into
This is a
the
while
accident,
ago.
and I moved my way up. And in 2012, after I had my daughter, I started as a supervisor.
Got it.
And so I enjoy. having my practice, but and then I was like, oh, I can't be a leader, not that I can't, I'm already a leader in some ways, right? But like, I think about the logistics of an organization. So I was like, let me just go into this organization. My director left, right? So I had to create the systems, help the all create, do all these things that I said I couldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I felt it in my spirit that I'm supposed to create my own, it's forced me into looking at next steps for um, creating not just a practice, but an organization that if this didn't happen, I promise you, I probably wouldn't have done it. God was like, you Celeste, you're getting too comfortable. Let's go over here so I can
Mm-hmm.
show you that you're capable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's next. I started when I started my podcast, I listened to the first episode where I was like, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. I want to help you shift the way you think. And shifting the way you think has kind of been the baseline for what I do, whether I'm talking to another therapist or a lawyer or an actor. Like, it's telling their story and how they've been able to shift, because we seem to get stuck. And so a couple years ago, I created my LLC, Shifting the Way You Think. And I said, I want to create something, I didn't know what that would look like. And this experience helped me see what that would look like. I want to create a group practice. I want to create like a holistic system for people to be able to tap into.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say what's next, that's what's next. It's like I got the LLC, I started this stuff. And even when I started my practice years ago, I said I wanted to create something where people can get healed in different arenas, whether it's financial,
Mm-hmm.
emotional, like socially, environmental, right? Like, there's so many different factors in our lives that I wanted people to be able to look at the full picture, because you got to shift the way you think in all arenas, whether it's finances, whether it's your social life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're stuck. My goal is for people to get unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
And this experience, like if the demotion created Celeste the Therapist, and now this just happened, you could only imagine the levels that I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to go. Like, it's going to be big. It's going to be big.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm happy to hear that. I am excited to see what the next chapter is of your life. And I know you're old, so you might not have, too much time. So I hope that you can speed that process up, but to my elder population.
And you talking, but you're right behind me. Like,
But I'm not in front though. I'm not in front. I'm behind. No, but no, this has been great. This has been great. I don't know if there's any last words you want to say to my audience. This is, I've been feeling in my spirit a new thing. It's like I need to take over Celeste the Therapist. No, but if there's any last words or anything you want to leave the audience with, your audience with, I think this is, first of all, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your experience, and being transparent about some of the things you've been thinking about, processing, and just being bold and respecting yourself, even in a place where I would say the culture can really be very toxic, that like there's so much you could have talked about just with that work culture and then being the only Black person. But anyways, thank you for sharing that. And so it's as if the audience has some things to process and think about, but is there anything you want to leave them with?
I would just leave people with the mindset of being encouraged, right? Whether, I just happen to be talking about a work situation, whether it's a financial situation, whether it's a home life situation, reminding yourself that, like, as long as you're still breathing, there's room for change.
Mm,
And the worst thing you can do is give up, right? The best thing you can do is work on creating a plan, not just creating a plan, but action steps. And even
mhm,
if that plan feels like it's so far fetched, right? I think about me starting my degree and not really, like, I was maneuvering the college world on my own. And by the time, like, I was getting my two associates, my 2-year degree, and I was like, oh, I want to be a therapist. That was going to take some time, especially with me going part-time, having to work. But I didn't get caught up in, like, oh my gosh, I have this much to go. I said to
mhm,
myself, oh, good job, you finished this class. Oh, you got
mhm,
this class done,
mhm,
right? I started to celebrate the moments. So I think when it comes to our ability to create a plan, we have that, but we get caught up in how far we have to go instead
Mhm.
of looking at the steps we're taking to get to that point.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you can be encouraged by celebrating the moments, right? Like there's a way to have peace in the middle of chaos, but you got to really work on conditioning your mind, right? You maybe you have to go into that job because rent needs to get paid, but what are you listening to on your way into work? What are you listening to on your way out of work?
Mhm.
Like, where are you
Mhm.
spending your time? Because you want to
Mhm.
develop a mindset that reminds you of who you are, especially when you have
Mhm.
a lot of forces trying to tell you who you're not. So I would
Mhm.
just challenge people to be encouraged. And remember, you have more power than you realize. You just have to have
Mhm.
faith to believe in yourself. Because when
Mhm.
you have faith to believe in yourself, no one can take you can't take my faith away from me, right?
Mhm.
My
Right, right.
mindset can help challenge it or take it, but you can't take it away from me. I can give it out by not conditioning my mind.
Mhm.
And so that's my encouragement for people.
Great. So this has been a great thank you for being on my show today.
You're welcome. It was amazing. You did a really good job. I wasn't sure, I was like, oh, it should work out. Like, I don't know. But yeah, nah, this was dope. I appreciate you even like coming up with this idea.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for
it's
sure.
it's something that has been heavy on my spirit. It's funny when the day I wrote the blog post, I woke up because I said I'm going to put a pin in this,
Mhm.
and 'cause I don't want to be filled with emotion and people lose the point. I'm like, I don't know who they think they are. Like, um, and now what the day I put it, I woke up and there's something in my spirit said, don't forget about that post you're supposed to be writing, Celeste. And
Uh-huh.
so then I wrote it out,
Mhm.
and then you came up with this idea. So
Yeah,
now, like, whether people see the blog post or hear this podcast, I'm excited for people. I think storytelling is powerful. It gives you hope, right? So I'm
absolutely.
excited for my audience to get hope about their situation, whether it's work or anywhere else. Like, I just
Mhm.
want you to have hope and know that you have power. So thank
Mhm.
you.
You're welcome. Hopefully your audience, they know how to juck and jive too. I don't can you define that for the audience right quick? No, I'm joking. Cool. No, this is cool. This is cool.
All right.